So the other day I made a video where I talked about why I no longer listen to Dave Ramsey. And they asked me, Marcelino, why is it that you don't listen to Dave Ramsey? In this video, I'm gonna tell you some of the reasons why I no longer listen to Dave Ramsey, but I'm not gonna focus on him. I'm gonna focus on what is a good debt versus bad debt. The only thing I request is that if you find some value in this video, that you hit the like button and you subscribe to the channel so you can help us get you more value. With that being said, let's get into it right away. So, good debt versus bad debt. Right now here in the United States, the focus goes mainly towards the bad debt. Okay, out of all things, right? You know, we focus towards what's not good. You know, we all do it as humans. It's normal for us to do that. The only thing with that is that there's a good debt, right? That is the contrary to that. But right now, I'm going to focus on what's a bad debt and why I personally believe it's not a good thing to have. So, what is considered a bad debt? Cars. When you go to a dealer, most people don't have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, or if you have more of a budget, you know, $100,000 for a nice, beautiful built custom Tesla. But cars often get confused as a good debt. And the reason why is because they say, well, I'm investing in my car. Okay, but the thing with cars is that they devalue in price. They don't produce you cash flow. They don't produce you money, which is why it's considered by most millionaire people, the multimillionaire, and you don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to make $1 million or have $1 million in the bank for you to really understand that bad debt, a car is part of the bad debt. Now, if you're talking about a collectible, that is a different story, because those are some of the things that a lot of people like to invest in. Those are collectibles. They go up in value as well. And so that is a different story. But a lot of them, they pay cash for it. They keep it. They build the custom and then they go make a profit out of it. Completely different story. If you go to the dealer shop and you go buy a Honda Civic, let's just say, I keep using the Honda Civic a lot. And you buy a car, let's just say it's $35,000. You go get a loan for that and your monthly payment is, let's just say $500. $500, $35,000 in the year 2022. By the minute you pull out of the parking lot, that car, if you try to sell it back to the dealership, they're not going to pay you $35,000 for that car. So keep that in mind, because that automatically is going to devalue. The more that you drive it, the more years that you keep it, it's going to devalue even more. So cars, it's obviously one of the reasons why most Americans are in debt right now. And I'm going to get into some of the statistics that I found earlier today on the national debt right now. But let's just stay focused. So cars, that is part of the bad debt. Also, the second one will be consumer debt. Consumer debt, it's such things as credit cards or personal loans. Credit cards right now, a lot of our community, a lot of our society, they just don't know how to use a credit card. A credit card, it's you go to the bank and let's just say you apply for a credit card. The bank says, okay, based on your credit score, I can give you a credit card for $3,000. You get that credit card, you automatically have $3,000. If you didn't have $3,000 in your bank, guess what? Now you have access to $3,000. You go to the store, you swipe that credit card, you go buy $1,000 worth of good stuff, $2,000 worth of good stuff, you get reward in advance. You basically are stealing from your future self. And I'm going to get to you in a minute why I say you steal from your future self. But let's just stay with the subject. You go and then most individuals, they go ahead and they get a statement. They get a statement. Let's just say the balance now is $2,000. Now you have $1,000 left in that credit card. The monthly payment is going to come in. They're not going to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs., you got to pay the $2,000. They're going to give you a minimum payment. And that minimum payment, let's just say, I'm throwing off numbers right now. Typically, the interest rate is going to be a lot higher. It's going to be anywhere from 17, 18, sometimes even 30%. Especially right now, the interest rates are starting to go up. That tends to go up as well. So now let's just say your payment is $50 a month. It's probably going to be less than that, $30 a month. Majority of that is going to go towards the interest. And a little portion, let's just say it's $30. Let's say $27 is going to go to the interest. Only $3 are going to go to the principal. When I ask the question to individuals when they're applying, when they want to buy a house and they come to me and then they say, hey, Marcelino, I want to buy a house. I say, okay, well, do you have any debt? Yes, I do. I have 2 credit cards. How much do you owe? Well, I don't know. Well, how much do you pay a month? They usually tell me the amount that they pay a month, but they can't tell right at the top of their mind what's their balance. That's not a good thing, because you need to know what your numbers are, and that is how all the banks actually make their money, because not a lot of people are financially educated on how a credit card ought to be used. But I'm going to get into that in another video. Right now, the focus on this is what is a bad debt. That is part of a bad debt. When you go ahead and slide your credit card, you go buy clothes, you go buy shoes, whatever is it that you want, right? We as adults, we supposed to do what is right, but we're like kids in our hearts, right? In our heads, we want to do what feels good. So sliding a credit card, no problem. I go ahead and spend $2,000. Now I gotta make my monthly payment, and guess what? I'm stuck. I keep using more. I spend more than what I actually bring in. So that is one of the bad debts. This one here is highlighted, and the reason why it's highlighted because I did a research on what is a good debt versus bad debt. Student loans came up based on a research by Chase. They said that is a good debt. I disagree with that, but that's just me. That's me, because I don't believe that you need, unless you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, okay, good. You go ahead, and you want to be a dentist, you have to go to school, right? Because you need to get your license with the state that you're in. So you need to go to school for that. But let's just say you want to be an accountant and you go to school to get a finance degree. You really don't need a degree in order to be a finance individual in the marketplace. I'm also in the financials. I don't have a degree. I got a degree in culinary. I don't even use it anymore. So that just goes to show you on another survey that I talked in a previous video, that almost 60 to 70% of individuals that go to school here in the United States, 60 to 70% of them, they don't even follow the degree, the career that they went to school for in the first place. So for me, student loans is a bad debt, because it doesn't produce you the cash flow. It doesn't produce you the necessary return on investment. Again, if you're a doctor, okay, different story. They have an argument there. I'm not even going to argue with that, because that is legit. That is okay. That makes sense. But if you go to school just to be a finance individual, art, you really don't need a degree. I know a buddy of mine who served in the military, in the army. He's actually an artist, and he is a tattoo artist. He never went to school. He just started practicing. He was little kids. He draws, murals of pictures on the walls, and he does art on your body. He didn't go to school for that. So that shows you that you don't need to go to school for you to get a degree to become an artist. One of the negative impacts is that if you don't know how to use, again, a credit card, that will eventually catch up to you, and it will impact your credit score. Now, when you have a bad credit score, in my example, when I have individuals, families that want to buy a house, I tell them, okay, what's your credit score? Here in the US, that's what we go based off, credit score is 500 points. Usually when you're around the 600s and up, maybe 650 and up, you have a solid score. But most people that I talk to, they are 500, 550, because they get negatively impacted by the amount of debt that they have, because they keep making only the minimum payments. And as they make the minimum payments, they go and spend more. So if my payment is $50, but if I go and spend $100, I'm spending more than what my actually payment is. So my balance keeps going up. My interest gets bigger. I have no return on investment. Those shoes, that shirt that I went to go buy, it's not going to give me any return. It's not going to make me money if I'm wearing this shirt. If I paid $1,000 for this shirt, it's not going to make me any money by me wearing it. I might look good on it, but it's just not going to make me any money. So it would have a negatively impact on your score. Another one is, again, I go back to the real estate example, the debt to income ratio. So When you're applying for a house, typically you get with your realtor, and your realtor will say, okay, let's connect it with the lender. When you're getting qualified with the lender, you provide all of your pay stubs, how much money you make, whatever you made in the last 2 years, your income tax forms. And if your debt is higher, this is not a mortgage, okay? This is for you to go apply for a mortgage. But if your debt exceeds a certain percentage of your income, meaning that, let's just say that a month I bring in $10,000, and after I buy this house, because I get an estimated amount that they're gonna give me. Now let's just say that with my mortgage payment, I'm gonna be making $7,500 in payments towards my house and whatever other debt that I have. This is not considering your necessities, your daily necessities, your food, transportation. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actual debt that you have in your name. So if it exceeds a certain percentage, if it's $7,500, but you're bringing in $10,000, that is way too high. You're not going to qualify for a loan. And if you are, you probably will qualify for a very less amount than what you're expecting for. If you were thinking that of buying a $500,000 house with a $10,000 income, but your monthly debt payments are going to be $7,500, you're probably not going to qualify for that $500,000 loan. You may qualify for anywhere $300,000 to $350,000. I'm just throwing numbers, but that's usually how it works. So your debt to income ratio is too high. There's a likely possibility that you cannot go ahead and buy any more real estate or whatever investment you want to do. And if you want to get into a house, great. That is going to knock off that possibility of getting into it. If you're going to buy an investment property, that will also knock it out. So therefore, you're not going to be able to get into a investment property. The second one is it has really high interest rates. Again, the example that I was given earlier with the credit card, it's typically anywhere from 20 to 30%. So that is very high. Yes, it is. The amount is a lot less, but the interest rate is higher. So in percentage wise, it's a lot of dollars. Okay. So if you buy a $500,000 house at a 3% interest rate, that doesn't exist, by the way, right now, currently, as the shooting of this video in August 2022, interest rates are right now probably hovering around the 5%. But if you get a 500,000, maybe 3%, maybe your interest rate is going to be anywhere, $200. Okay. That's not a lot considering how big of a purchase you're making with the interest rate. So percentage wise, it's not a lot. It is $200, but it's not considering the amount that you're borrowing. Now, if you have a credit card and your monthly payment is $30, but $27 of it is going to interest, that is a lot of money that is going to pay your interest. So your interest rate is typically very, very high. So one of the things that I would say to you is avoid it. And how would you do that? Knowing what you can afford. And you typically, we don't get taught this in school to manage our debt. We don't get taught in school on how to make more money. I made a video previously on, why I believe that you really don't need to go to school. Alternative education like this video that I'm making for you, it's probably one of the best ways for you to learn. And there's plenty of videos out there that will actually show you that alternative learning, it's actually better than going to school. But again, I'm not going to argue with you with that. That is just my point of view. So my thinking to that is avoid it, knowing how much you can afford. And so the second one is going to be, does it have a future benefit? Like the example that I was giving you on the car or the shirt. If it's not going to bring me any return on investment, then maybe my best option at the moment is maybe not to buy it. But again, it's very hard when you don't get educated. And nowadays in our families, in our societies, in our culture, we at times are afraid of speaking of money. You'd be surprised how many families are actually afraid of speaking of money at the dinner table. It happens a lot. It used to happen in my family until I broke the curse. I said, no more. I'm going to talk about that. It was uncomfortable at first, but that is one of the things that we talk about. And so guess what? We put ourselves a budget. How much we're going to spend a month. We keep track of our expenses. And I know how much I can afford. It has happened to me multiple times right now where my wife and I, we're currently talking about buying a different car. But we're not going to do that right now. Why? Because we have two vehicles that can actually get us from point A to point B. I want a Tesla, I want a Lexus, but I'm not going to go to the bank and get a loan for that. Because why? For me, I have other priorities. I have other investments that I'm looking out for that it's going to produce me cash flow. That is how much I'm paying. My cash flow is basically if I have a house and let's just say my payment is $1,300, but I'm charging the renters $1,600. That additional difference, the $300, that is your cash flow. That is your cash flow for you to not spend it. Okay. When you're starting off, most people would know that you reinvest it back into your business so that it can produce you more cash flow along the way. So knowing the future benefits of it, if there's no future benefits, great. We don't get involved in that. Okay, so the contrary to that, you have the good debt. And again, earlier I gave the example of why, the question that I was asked, why I no longer listen to Dave Ramsey. Well, this is the reason why. Because Dave Ramsey believes that there's no such thing as a good debt. And there's a lot of people that live and die by that code. Great. But you got individuals like Grant Cardone, Robert Kiyosaki. They leverage the debt. They go ahead and borrow money against their properties, and then they go ahead and get that money, not to go and buy Rolexes and vehicles. They have all of that. Why? Because they have enough investments that are producing the cash flow for them to live that lifestyle. But how do they do that? Do you think that they really, when they say they have a net worth of $1 billion, do you really believe that they have $1 billion in the bank? Maybe Warren Buffett does. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg does. Maybe Jeff Bezos does. But somebody, let's just say Grant Cardone, he's worth $2.5 billion. I think it is, if not probably 3 by now. He doesn't have $3 billion sitting in the bank. He has those $3 billion in assets, and he has debt against those assets. But those assets are producing him cash flow. After he pays all of his debt, he has enough cash flow, and that's how he is able to live the lifestyle that he has. That's how he's able to purchase that airplane, the private jet, the helicopter, the 10X helicopters that you see him all the time, just flying around. That's how he's able to sustain the lifestyle. So the good debt, it builds and improves your credit. Yes, it does. It improves your credit. Now, most people believe that you don't need credit, and you really don't need credit when you're going to buy an investment, because you can be somebody that raises money. You can use OPM, older people's money. That's what it's called, OPM, older people's money. You go ahead and raise the money. Investors will give you the amount after you produce your case. You give them the data necessary. A good example of this is the show Shark Tank. In the show Shark Tank, you see individuals, entrepreneurs with ideas to solving a problem and giving a service or a product, and they're seeking the investments from these sharks sitting at the table, asking them to invest in the company with a percentage return or a certain percentage of ownership on that company that they're looking to fund. So you don't need credit, but having credit, it's a huge benefit. It will produce you the good credit in order for you to go get another loan for you to buy a property. Potential tax breaks. This is something that I'm still learning. I'm still learning this because it's something that I never got taught. They didn't teach me this in school. My parents definitely didn't teach me this. And this is something that I'm learning on a single basis. I have 2 businesses that I run right now, a real estate business and then a financial business. I came to learn that when I own a business, if I produce certain income, if I produce certain amount of money, I can tax write off. And let's just say my computer is a tax write-off. If I have a company, an LLC, a limited liability company, if I buy a vehicle and if I'm making payments on that car, that is a tax write-off as well. So there's a lot of tax breaks, a lot of tax benefits that come with having a good credit. Opportunity to build equity. Again, if you have a property, an investment property that is, it continues to build equity. Right now, they're in the boom of the 2019 all the way up through early 2022. At the recording of this video, again, it's August 2022. But real estate has just taken off exponentially. It has just taken off. If you had a house in 2019 that was worth $350,000, Today, probably, depending on the house, but I'm just giving you an example. It's probably going to be worth $650,000. You have about $300,000 in equity. Most people, most individuals, they believe that, and again, I'm not going to touch on this. I'm just going to touch very briefly, but they believe that I'm going to pay off my house as fast as I can so that I don't have any more payments on my house. Okay. But essentially what that does is what it's called a debt equity, because the equity of the house, if you have a $600,000 house, I have a client right now, they have $600,000 paid for, free and clear. It's okay. They believe that, having my house paid for, I'm okay. Again, all this doesn't apply to everybody. This is just that what I learned and what I believe it's going to help me. It's going to help you if you're that individual who's looking to invest in more properties in real estate or whatever is it that you believe, buy a commercial building. Using the equity of that property is going to allow you to buy more properties. So therefore, in the future, you can grow your equity, borrow against the equity to go buy more properties, grow that equity, borrow against it, and go buy more properties. The other one is the return on investment. That is the ROI. The ROI is basically how much return on my investment. There's a mathematical formula to that. And if I'm making, I give the example again. If my mortgage, for the rental property I have is $1,300, let's just say, but I'm charging the tenant $2,000, that is giving me a positive cash flow of $700. So basically I multiply that times 12, and then I divide that by the amount. It gives me a percentage. If it's anywhere from, let's just say that it gives you 6% ROI, return on investment. 6%. A lot of people might say, well, that's not a lot. Okay, great. But how much interest are you getting on those $100,000 that are sitting in the bank? No bank is going to give you 1%, but let's just say that they give you 1% for just having that money in the bank. Do you think that 6% is better than 1%? I believe so. You might not believe that, but I believe it is. So the return on investment is very important. Mortgage loan. Again, I highlighted it just as well as this one right here. Why? Because I believe that a mortgage loan, it's kind of biased. It's a little bit biased. Because you can have a mortgage. Most people are not going to have $500,000 in liquid cash to go buy a property. And most people will tell you, don't do that. Just go ahead and rent and then go buy 2 properties, because the misconception, the misunderstanding here in the United States is that home ownership is the American dream. I personally disagree with that. I believe that free enterprise, which is the backbone of this country, what it was built in, it's the American freedom. It's the American dream. Do you think that somebody that comes here as an immigrant, they got to the country illegally, do you think that they struggle in their country to come over here to say, I'm going to go to the United States to go buy a house? They don't say that. They come over here because of free enterprise. They want to make their own choices. They want freedom. They want to be able to perhaps build a company. Many people come with that mindset, but once we get sucked into the culture that the American dream is owning a home for yourself, home ownership is the American dream, then that's when things get a little bit twisted. So understand that mortgage loans, it's a little bit biased, because if you have a house, great. Now, how do you leverage that? One of the things that I did is when I have my house, I borrow against it, and then I went to go buy me an investment property. So again, it's a little bit biased. I still put it here, but I highlighted it because most individuals believe that mortgage loans are bad. It's a liability. Robert Kiyosaki believes that it is a liability. In your home, it is a liability. It's not part of your net worth. A liability is also when you have a car, when you have a credit card, that is your liability. Your assets in your asset column is what's bringing you cash flow. How many properties do I have invested? Real estate loans. Again, I already touched that. It's basically if I want to go buy an apartment building, or if I want to go buy a commercial building, right? I have to get a loan on it. I'm going to use a loan, and then once that property builds enough equity where I can pull out the equity, I'm going to borrow against it to go buy some more. So loans are one of the good things that you can leverage as a good debt. The other one is also, this is a benefit. It increases your net worth. Your net worth is basically your assets minus your liabilities. How much do I own versus how much do I owe? If I own $1 million of real estate, but I owe, and this is all investment, this is not your mortgage, but if I own $1 million worth of real estate, and if I owe $500,000 in debt, and that is my house, let's just say, that is my car, whatever that liability is, $1 million minus 500,000 equals 500,000. So my net worth is $500,000. That is what a net worth is your assets minus your liabilities. One of the things with the good debt is that it's going to come with risk. One of that could be, let's just say, again, you have an investment property. And take, for example, 2007, 2008, when the real estate bubble just burst. A lot of people a lot of investors actually, they didn't know how to leverage the system very well. And honestly, it was fault of the bank, because they were just giving out loans. If you had a dog, guess what? He gets a loan as well. If you had an aunt, she gets a loan as well. So it was caused by the mortgage lending that eventually led to a bubble burst. But it comes with risk. If you have a property, if that happened, $500,000, and then next thing you know, the bubble burst, that property is no longer worth $500,000. Now it's worth probably 50% less. So $250,000. So if it's worth $250,000, but I'm making payments as if it was $500,000, what a lot of people did is, well, why do I got to pay $3,000 a month when I could go buy me another property for $200,000 and make make a $1,200 a month? I'm saving myself $1,800. Why am I here? So what they did is they just dumped those properties, and they took the hit, because you cannot buy a property for a minimum when you go bankruptcy. You cannot buy a property for, I believe, 7 years, or there's a number of years that you cannot buy a property legally. They won't give you a loan if you foreclose on a property, if you basically let it go. It comes with the risk. Again, it may devalue. Okay, so now I'm going to show you something real quick, because I believe that if you have, let's just say, bad debt, I'm going to give you a little bit of the options that are available to there. I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm not advising you to do this. I'm just giving you some of the scenarios that I have, heard from different families that I dealt with in the past. But they've done what is called a debt consolidation. So your debt consolidation is, you have a credit card, you have a card, you have a student loan, you have a medical card, and in total it's worth $10,000 of just debt. There are companies out there that will negotiate with all of those companies, and they will consolidate all of the debt. So therefore you can make one monthly payment to this company that is negotiating for you. They'll pay out the debt. So guess what? Now you're here, you're paying now this company that just negotiated for you. So you're going to pay, I don't know what that amount is going to look like, but let's just say $8,000 now instead of the $10,000. You essentially consolidated your debt. It might work for some people. It might not work for some individuals. It's very situational. I'm just giving you the example of what I have learned. But again, one of the reasons why most people, like I was saying earlier, they can't just seem to get out of debt is because you got the spending versus the income. Okay? Spending versus revenue. How much money am I spending versus how much money am I bringing? So if you're spending a lot more than what you actually are bringing in, there's a problem there. So you need to be able to identify where is the money leaking. It's almost like you have a bucket and then you're trying to fill it up, but there's a leak going on around the bucket. You got to identify where are the buckets and where you can stop bleeding, where you can stop the leaking. So spending versus revenue is very, very, very important. It goes back to almost as an example that I gave you, to your assets minus liabilities. But take a look at this. The national debt right now, as of August 2022. Can you go ahead and read that number? I don't know if you can actually read it, but it's $30 trillion. So $30.6 trillion. Take a look at this. These are hundreds, hundred thousands, millions, billions, and trillions. Right now, our debt sits at about $30.6 trillion, ladies and gentlemen. That is a massive, massive amount of money. Just in 1921, the national debt was $241 billion. $241 billion, a lot of money. $241 billion, it's still $760 billion to get to just 1 trillion. Only 1 trillion. Right now, 30 trillion. 30 trillion in just 100 years. 29 trillion actually. Let's just say we rounded up to a trillion dollars. $29 trillion in debt we have actually incurred since 1921 all the way up to 2022. That is 101 year. Right now, the national debt on average per capita, per person, per head, like me and you, sits about $91,000. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody in the country has $91,000 in debt. It just means that if you were to spread out evenly across the entire audience here in the United States, you will get to an amount of $91,000 per person. Some people have debt, some people don't have debt, some people have a little bit of debt, some people have a lot of debt. But we sit about $91,000. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a huge, huge, huge amount. And if you are currently in debt, because believe me, I've been through that. I've been through what it feels like to be in debt. You can't sleep at night. You go to sleep thinking, how am I going to pay my bills next month? How am I going to pay it this month? You know, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I'm bringing in $1,000 every 2 weeks. But by the time you bring in that $1,000, all of it's already gone. Because you have your debt. You have your necessities. You have to put food on the table. If you have children, you have to feed them. You have to clothe them. You have to take them to school. You have to go to work. You have to buy groceries for the family. So it is very stressful. It is stressful. That's the bad news. The good news is that you can do something about it. One of that is very simple. Just knowing how much you can afford. It sounds very simple and very common sense, but common sense nowadays, it's not very common. It doesn't really exist nowadays. But it's very simple. I'm not saying it's easy. It's very, very simple for you to do. It's really just sitting down with your spouse. If you have a spouse, honey, how much do we owe? Well, we owe $100,000. Okay, how much money are we bringing in? We're bringing in, $10,000. Okay, how much do we pay a month? We pay $7,000. Okay, what are those $4,000, $6,000? I mean, $4,000 are going for. If I'm already taking care of my food, okay, we're paying about $8,000 a month. Okay, we got to identify where those extra $2,000 are going for. A lot of the times you'll be surprised that if you start putting them on paper, you'll be surprised. Restaurants, things that you really don't need. If you go buy some shoes, I used to be a big Nike fan. I still am, don't get me wrong. I still buy Nikes. But for me, it was like if I didn't have the money, I had to have those $200 shoes, that $150 shoes. And I just couldn't wait, especially when I was in the Marine Corps, because when I was in the Marine Corps, I was broke. I was living paycheck to paycheck because I was going out clubbing. I was going out with my friends. We go party every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and sometimes even Sunday night. And then we would go to hangover to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, go PT, that's what we call physical training. We go running, and then you can smell the alcohol coming out of our breaths. But we love party. We love going to the clubs. And then it wasn't $20, and I'm talking about 13 years ago. This is 13 years ago, okay? We were spending on average $200 just for going out. And all of the money was going on in just drinks at the bar. They didn't teach us how to manage our money. And that's one of my missions here, is to reach out as many veterans, as many active duty as I possibly can, because I've been through that. I know what it feels like. I understand that it's not easy. Sometimes you feel like there's no hope. And that's why there's a lot of people that are committing suicide. But I'm not saying that's you right now, but I'm just telling you that there is hope. And one of the ways is that just knowing how much you can afford. And the second question is, is it going to benefit me along the way? Am I stealing from my future self? That's one of the examples that I was touching earlier. I'm stealing from my future self. If I go buy credit card, if I go apply for a credit card and then I have $5,000 and then I go spend $4,000 and then I got to pay those $4,000 back, I'm not being fair to my family. I'm not being fair to my kids, because I'm doing what's good for me right now at this specific moment. We want instant gratification. That is the norm. That is the culture nowadays. It's not the norm. It's not I'm saying that it's like that's okay. I'm just saying that society has accepted it for that to be okay, to get instant gratification, that I want it now. If I don't want to wait 6 months. I don't want to wait a year. I don't want to wait 10 years for that matter. I want it now. And that's why we go and get a credit card. And the next thing you know, we're in a lot of debt. And then you're thinking to yourself, how did I get myself into this mess to begin with? So very important. If you're going through that, it can be done. You just got to put it on paper. You know, talk it over with your spouse. Talk it over with your buddy with the buddy of yours. Someone that is doing better than you are right now. Somebody that you know was in debt and that was able to get out of debt. You know, pick up the phone and call them. Like, hey, I'm curious. How did you get out of debt? How did you do it? You know, what took you to get there? A lot of the times you're going to find out that the conversation, it's not mathematical. It's really nothing that is scientific. It's not rocket science. It's just simple discipline that it takes time to adapt, new habits, new goals. The vision gets clear. Now you're making better decisions. Now you're understanding where the money needs to go. Now you understand that instant gratification maybe can be delayed for a little bit. Let me focus on my goal. Let me stay right here. Okay, I know that this feels good, that if I want to get it right now, but let me stay focused. Doesn't matter. I'm going to pass you. And the next thing you know, you pass it. Guess what? It wasn't that bad, right? It wasn't that bad. It's like, it's okay. Can't believe that I needed that. So those are the things that are going to get you to the next level when it comes for you to get out of debt. I personally was able to do so, you know, with the help of Dave Ramsey. You know, I got to thank him for that, because he is the master. He's very, very good. He's obviously doing 100x better than I am right now at this specific moment. But I'm saying though that he has this strategy. He has the good advice for that individual who is just caught up in the consumer debt, in the bad debt. Once you get from this point and then you're saying, okay, whew, that wasn't so bad. It wasn't easy, but man, it took a lot of work, but we made it. We did it. Okay, now I have an additional $4,000 a month. Now I have an additional $40,000 a year. What do I do with this money? Because it can be easy to get off track and get sidetracked and then go back to the old habits. So what you do is you find a mentor, you find a coach. You don't necessarily have to pay for them. You can watch videos like this one where you can get aligned with your goals. You can get aligned with your vision. And the next thing you know, you're thinking, okay, how do I invest my money? You know, what can I do with it? Why do I want to invest my money? And the next thing you know, you start finding out information. You start coming out in front of people that are going to guide you, are going to tell you some of the steps that they took, some of the failures that they did, that I did, some of the mistakes that I committed when I was a young 20-year-old, even a young 30-year-old, when I was just in debt and it was stressful for me. So with that said, that is the difference between good debt and bad debt. Again, the national debt right now sits at about $30.6 trillion on average right now. The average per capita per person, it's about $92,000 per head. Think about that for a minute. It takes a lot. So there are things that you can do. Just you got to identify, you know, maybe I don't need that credit card. Maybe I'm going to put a hold on that. And then I have an additional money now. Where can I invest it? How can I invest it? Well, you start finding out that there's different places you can do collectibles. I know I gave the example of real estate a lot, but you can actually do collectibles. You can do commodities. You could do baseball cards, basketball cards, cars. There's all kinds of, some people do stock market, index funds. Crypto's not doing so good right now. So for all those crypto traders that were doing really, really good at one point, they saw a massive loss. So it all comes with risk, right? I mentioned that earlier. There's always a risk for the investments that you want to take, that you are going to take to get you to the next level. So with that being said, identify what the risks are going to be, understand the toleration, how much can you tolerate for that risk, and just really make a decision that is best for you. With that being said, I hope that you find some value in this video today. If you do, the only thing we ask is that you click the button, that you hit the like button, and you subscribe to the channel. Also, all of our social media is going to be here. Subscribe to the channel, allow us to give you more content, help us reach out more audience, because we have great value that we just want to pour back to you. We just want to give back to you, and you can help us do that. With that being said, share this video with anyone that you may find it valuable. Until the next time, we'll see you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.